The blistering sun scorched the Nevada desert as the vast facility stood silent in the heat of midday. The hum of machines echoed through the concrete labyrinth. Deep beneath the surface, where scientists, engineers, and military personnel worked tirelessly to bring a dream to life. For decades, humanity had speculated on the power of railguns, but until this moment it was just a theory, a concept that belonged to science fiction. Now the time had come to make it a reality. The massive steel structure that housed the prototype stood in the center of the desert under the careful watch of armed guards. Its size was almost incomprehensible. It stretched over 200 feet long. Its rails gleamed under the harsh sunlight. The sheer scale of the weapon was staggering. It was more than just a piece of machinery. It was a symbol of humanity's ambition and defiance. Inside the control room, a team of engineers hovered over their monitors, their eyes fixed on the various readouts that filled the screens. Sweat beaded on their foreheads as they checked the final systems before the test. It had been a long journey to get here, but everything was in place now. The final verification was underway, and the countdown had already begun. The atmosphere was thick with tension. No one dared speak above a whisper as the air felt charged with the impending breakthrough. The project director, a tall woman with sharp features, paced back and forth, her eyes locked onto the monitors, her hands shaking slightly as she glanced at the timer that ticked down the seconds. There were so many people riding on this moment, so many invested in this single test, and yet a small voice in the back of her mind reminded her that this could all fall apart in an instant. The railgun's power had been carefully calculated, but no one truly knew what would happen when the first shot was fired. The countdown reached 10 seconds, and everyone held their breath. The silence of the room was deafening. The test chamber miles away was silent too. Only the distant hum of generators could be heard as the machines charged to full capacity. With each passing second, the tension in the air thickened. The world outside had no idea what was about to unfold. At 0, the signal was given, and the first surge of energy coursed through the rails. The sound was like nothing anyone had ever heard, a deep resonating hum that filled the air, followed by a violent explosion of force. As the railgun discharged its projectile into the sky, the shockwave from the blast was so powerful it rattled the windows of the facility and sent dust flying for miles in every direction. The projectile shot into the air at unimaginable speed. Its trajectory was so precise that the target miles away in the desert was obliterated in a split second. The result was nothing short of spectacular. The railgun had done what was once thought impossible. It had fired a projectile faster than the speed of sound, and with pinpoint accuracy. The test was a resounding success. A collective gasp echoed through the control room. As the monitors confirmed the impact, the engineers erupted into cheers, while the director's face remained stoic, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had known it would work, but seeing it in action was a different experience altogether. It was a moment of triumph for humanity, but it was also a moment of realization. This weapon was real, it was ready, and the world would never be the same again. Outside the facility, the desert was quiet once more, but the silence felt different now, because somewhere far beyond Earth, in the vast expanse of space, there were eyes watching, and they had seen humanity's breakthrough. Far beyond the reaches of Earth's atmosphere, in the dark expanse of the galaxy, a coalition of alien species watched with growing unease as the humans made their first true leap into a power that rivaled the might of ancient empires across the stars. The world they had once considered insignificant was beginning to stir. The broadcasts from Earth's test were intercepted by numerous listening posts scattered throughout space. Beings of various shapes and sizes gathered to observe this unexpected development. The first to take notice were the Quothar, a technologically advanced race known for their unblinking eyes that could see across vast distances of space. Their society had long prided itself on its ability to calculate probabilities with near-perfect accuracy, and until this day they had viewed humanity as little more than an unpredictable curiosity. Their initial assessment had dismissed humans as primitive and easily manipulated, but now their calculations were beginning to shift in unsettling ways. Through their vast network of telepathic communicators, the Quothar sent word to the Kara Coalition, an alliance of over a dozen alien races, each with their own unique strengths and agendas. They had all agreed on one thing: the humans were not a threat. They were far too young in their development to be considered anything other than a nuisance, yet the railgun test had changed everything. In the Kara Council chamber, a vast room illuminated only by the cold light of distant stars, a debate raged with intensity. The Quothar had brought forth the evidence of humanity's achievement, and every word they spoke seemed to carry more weight than the last. The alien races had never truly feared Earth's weapons, but this new development was different. The humans had reached a point where their technology could rival or even surpass anything the Kara had encountered before. The Xandari, a race of towering insectoids with chitinous armor and hive minds, were the first to speak. They had witnessed the rapid evolution of humanity's military capacity from a distance, and now their voices were laced with concern. Their species was known for their pragmatism and strategic foresight, but this new development had them questioning their earlier assumptions. The leader of the Xandari spoke bluntly: "We must act now before they reach the next phase, before they learn to replicate this power in their warships." The Quothar responded with a sharp counterpoint: "The humans are not like other species. They will not simply bend to force. We must understand their motivations and their methods before we launch any attack. We do not know what else they are capable of." As the debate continued, the other species within the council weighed in. The Selvari, a race of telepathic nomads who had long avoided any direct conflict with other species, suggested a more cautious approach. They recommended sending spies to Earth to gather more intelligence about the humans' next steps, while the Nogrim, a brutal and war-hungry species, believed in a swift strike before humanity could fully harness its newfound power. Tensions ran high as the factions within the Kara coalition argued their points until finally the ruling voice of the council, the ancient and wise Ithar, decided it was time to act. The Ithar were a race of beings older than most known civilizations. Their minds were capable of perceiving the ebb and flow of time in ways that defied logic, and their decision would mark the beginning of a new era for both humanity and the galaxy. The Ithar's decision was simple: that they would invade Earth and take control of the railgun technology before it could be used against them. But they would not do it blindly. They would send a force far greater than any the humans had ever seen to ensure that their new weapon would not be the herald of humanity's dominance, but the catalyst for their downfall. As the Council's decree spread across the stars and the alien ships began to mobilize for war, there was one thing the Kara and their allies could not know yet, something that would shift the balance of power in ways they couldn't even imagine. Humanity was not the weak and vulnerable species they had once believed them to be. The humans had learned much from their past, and now they had something far more dangerous than technology. They had the will to fight for their survival. The first signs of the alien threat arrived not with a roar, but with an eerie, suffocating silence. The skies above Earth darkened as colossal ships, cloaked in advanced stealth technology, descended upon the planet. The world had been blindsided, and for a moment, there was nothing but confusion. People across the globe looked up to see shadows eclipsing the sun, massive vessels larger than anything human technology had ever conceived. The peaceful hum of daily life shattered in an instant. The initial assault came without warning. A series of targeted strikes on Earth's largest cities turned them into rubble within minutes. New York, Tokyo, Berlin, and Moscow were among the first to feel the alien fury. Waves of energy blasts rained down, melting skyscrapers, igniting streets, and disintegrating entire buildings. The chaos was instantaneous, as humanity's most populous regions were crippled in a terrifying display of power. The air was thick with dust and ash, and screams filled the streets as survivors scrambled for shelter, bewildered by the speed and brutality of the alien onslaught. Earth's military was caught off guard. While the Railgun project had been a closely guarded secret, the suddenness of the attack left even the most prepared nations unready for the alien advance. In every corner of the globe, chaos reigned as cities burned and millions scrambled for survival. Governments fell into disarray as they tried to formulate a response to the overwhelming alien firepower. Military leaders were thrust into leadership positions they were unprepared for, as the hope for humanity's survival seemed to diminish by the hour. But beneath the surface, deep within secret military facilities, a different story was unfolding. The global defense network, which had been quietly establishing the railgun defense systems, was now activated. What had once been the stuff of science fiction was now humanity's last line of defense. Hidden in vast, undisclosed locations across Earth's continents, the enormous railgun systems began to power up, their systems humming to life, and a tense anticipation filled the air. As the alien ships loomed overhead, humanity's answer to their devastating weapons was finally ready to be unleashed. The first shot was a gamble. The global defense systems, coordinated across multiple nations, took aim at one of the largest alien vessels hovering above North America. The monstrous warship, which had been raining hell on the continent, was unaware of the incoming threat. The railgun's energy reserves had been fully charged, and with a single, synchronized pull of triggers from across the globe, the immense projectile was launched. The air seemed to freeze in time as the railgun fired its first shot. An electromagnetic pulse that shot from the Earth's surface with such velocity and precision that even the most advanced alien shields couldn't hope to block it. The projectile slammed into the alien ship with a force so great that it split the vessel in two. The resulting explosion sent a shockwave across the sky, lighting up the atmosphere in a blinding flash. The first victory had been claimed by humanity, and with it, a new sense of hope. But the aliens were not unprepared. They quickly retaliated, unleashing a full-scale bombardment of their own. Massive energy beams and projectiles shot down from their ships, leveling more cities and targeting humanity's railgun facilities. The aliens had underestimated the humans' ability to fight back, but now they were about to learn the true nature of Earth's new weapon. The battle had only just begun, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. Earth's survivors, however, did not flinch. The people of the world rallied to the call, uniting as never before. The railguns fired again and again, cutting through the alien ships with brutal efficiency. The humans were no longer helpless victims. They had turned the tide in the skies, and they would not stop until their world was reclaimed. Every shot that ripped through the alien fleet was a statement that humanity had come of age, that the days of being a footnote in the galaxy's history were over. The world was in the midst of chaos, but for the first time in a long while, humanity felt a spark of defiance. The world watched in stunned silence as the massive alien ships fell from the sky, their once impenetrable hulls now burning and breaking apart under the precise fire of Earth's railguns. The hum of the electromagnetic cannons became a constant sound across the globe as railgun systems from every corner of the planet fired in synchronized waves. Humanity, in its desperate moment of need, had found the strength to stand up and deliver a blow to the invading force, but the battle was far from over. High above the Earth, alien ships were falling, and their commanders were in a panic. The sheer force of the railgun strikes had taken down the first wave of invaders, but the aliens were not accustomed to failure, especially not so easily. The remaining ships, massive and formidable, regrouped and began to retaliate with greater force, unleashing a barrage of destructive energy that rained down like a relentless storm. The alien fleet's counterattack was swift and devastating. Enormous beams of light streaked through the atmosphere, searing through the air like firestorms. Major cities around the globe were hit again, some reduced to ash in moments, others left in ruins. Earth's defenses, stretched thin, struggled to keep up. The railguns, despite their power, were vulnerable to direct strikes. Every time a shot fired, there was a chance the alien ships could retaliate with overwhelming force. The cost of each victory became more apparent as Earth's railgun facilities were targeted relentlessly. But the alien invaders, who once considered Earth a primitive backwater, had underestimated humanity's resolve. The railguns, despite their vulnerabilities, had proven to be a game-changer. The aliens had expected quick domination, not a protracted battle with a species that refused to surrender. As the alien warships hovered over the decimated cities, the remaining forces on the ground began to mobilize. Human soldiers, now equipped with railgun-assisted combat suits, light, agile armor augmented with electromagnetic energy, moved into position. These were no longer the scared civilians hiding underground. These were soldiers ready to fight for their homes. The suits, developed in secret alongside the railguns, had turned human infantry into a formidable force. With each suit, the soldiers gained the ability to fire electromagnetic bolts at enemy targets with the same precision and power as the massive railgun cannons in the sky. The first ground assaults began as alien forces descended into the ruins of Earth's cities. The aliens, with their terrifying weaponry and unrelenting numbers, had hoped to crush humanity's resistance on the ground. But the human soldiers, now armed with railgun-powered weapons, did not flee. Instead, they stood their ground, pushing back with a new, explosive form of combat. The railgun suits amplified their strength, turning even the most ordinary soldier into a one-man army capable of tearing through alien troops with ease. The fighting on the ground was brutal. Alien infantry, with their imposing exoskeletons and superior technology, clashed against the human soldiers in a war that seemed to span both land and sky. The streets were littered with debris, the air thick with the smoke of destroyed vehicles and weapons. But there was one thing the humans had that the aliens could not predict: the fire of defiance in their hearts. With every alien that fell, with every railgun shot that tore through enemy lines, humanity's resolve grew stronger. In the midst of the chaos, the humans found new ways to adapt. Their railgun technology, initially designed for long-range bombardment, was now reworked for close-quarter combat. Field teams used portable, handheld railguns, firing projectiles at lightning speed, turning every battlefield into a deadly arena. The alien forces, once so confident in their superiority, now found themselves caught in a deadly game they hadn't prepared for. The sky above was a war zone, but now the Earth's surface had become one as well. As the aliens regrouped and prepared for another wave of assault, humanity had begun to show the true scope of its strength. The railguns had only been the beginning. Now, on the ground and in the air, humanity was proving that they were no longer a species to be underestimated, and the invaders would soon learn that every inch of Earth would be fought for, fiercely and without mercy. The world had changed in a matter of days. What began as a desperate struggle for survival had quickly evolved into a war for Earth's very existence. As alien forces continued their bombardment, humanity's resilience sparked a new wave of defiance. The railgun systems had proven their worth in the sky, and human soldiers, now armed with railgun-enhanced armor and weapons, took the battle to the ground. The cities that had once been symbols of human achievement now became battlegrounds, each street and alley a microcosm of the larger war for the planet's future. In the heart of what remained of New York City, now a ruined wasteland of shattered buildings and smoldering wreckage, a group of soldiers moved through the rubble, their railgun suits crackling with energy. The hum of their weapons was a constant reminder of humanity's newfound might, but there was no time to celebrate. The alien forces were relentless, sending wave after wave of troops in an attempt to stamp out the human resistance. The soldiers, grim-faced and determined, were part of an elite task force formed to take the fight to the alien invaders and reclaim their home. The fighting had grown increasingly brutal as alien forces began to adapt to the railgun-powered human suits. The aliens, with their advanced technology and overwhelming numbers, began to counter the human advantage. Massive war machines, towering above the remains of the cities, stomped through the streets, crushing anything in their path. Their weapons fired explosive energy pulses that obliterated anything they touched, including human soldiers who dared to stand in their way. The aliens had underestimated the humans before, but now they were beginning to understand the depth of humanity's resolve. Despite the overwhelming odds, humanity's response was unyielding. Soldiers with railgun-enhanced armor tore through the alien infantry with precision and force, their electromagnetic weapons cutting down enemy troops like a scythe through wheat. The aliens, though technologically superior in many ways, could not keep up with the relentless human drive to survive. With every shot fired, humanity made it clear they would not be taken without a fight. Across the globe, humanity's resistance was beginning to coalesce. In the shattered remnants of London, a group of resistance fighters gathered in the underground tunnels beneath the city. They had become experts at guerrilla warfare, using the crumbling infrastructure to their advantage. Armed with portable railguns and crude, homemade explosives, they launched attacks on alien supply lines, disrupting their ability to reinforce their forces. Each victory, no matter how small, fueled the fire of resistance that spread from city to city. The aliens, who had thought the Earth would crumble beneath their feet, now faced a force they hadn't expected, the full fury of a united species willing to fight to the last breath. In space, humanity's railgun-assisted warships had begun to take form. The first human fleet, outfitted with a new generation of railguns capable of launching projectiles from orbit, was preparing to engage the alien warships directly. The moment was drawing near when humanity would no longer be forced to play defense. They were ready to take the fight to the invaders' doorstep. As the ground battle raged, the true scope of the alien assault became clear. Their forces had established a stronghold in the skies, with massive motherships directing waves of smaller fighter crafts to engage humanity's remaining defenses. The Earth's military leaders knew that the time to strike was now. The railguns, once used solely for defense, would be turned on the alien ships. The first wave of human warships, armed with railguns, launched from Earth's surface. They were slow, but their weapons could pierce the thickest alien armor. With each salvo, the humans pressed forward, determined to drive the invaders out. Back on the ground, however, the struggle was far from over. The alien forces had learned, and their retaliation was swift and deadly. The human resistance was faced with a choice: retreat into the underground and allow the invaders to claim the planet, or fight with everything they had left and risk everything. The soldiers in the field, armed with railguns and fueled by their unbreakable will, knew there was only one choice. Earth would not fall without a fight. With a roar of defiance, they charged forward once again, determined to push the alien forces back, no matter the cost. The inferno of battle had only just begun, but humanity had already shown the invaders one undeniable truth: Earth would not be conquered so easily. Every inch of the planet would be defended, and the invaders would soon realize that humanity's greatest weapon was not its technology. It was its unrelenting spirit to fight and survive. The battle had raged for weeks, but humanity's persistence was beginning to carve a new path. The alien invaders, who had initially swarmed the planet with overwhelming force, were now facing an unexpected shift. Their forces had been divided by multiple fronts: space, air, and ground. And the steady, unyielding push from humanity was starting to show its effects. The alien ships in orbit, once brimming with arrogance, now flickered with uncertainty. The tide of war had begun to turn, not because humanity's technology had outmatched the invaders, but because humanity itself was a force unlike anything the aliens had anticipated. In the ruins of what was once Paris, a human commander named Olivia Granger stood in the remnants of a command center, watching her soldiers rally. The streets were a labyrinth of rubble and ruin, but in the midst of the devastation, human ingenuity had found a way to strike back. Guerrilla tactics had turned the once choking smog of defeat into a battlefield of opportunity. It wasn't just the railguns that had proven their worth. It was humanity's refusal to give up, to adapt, and to overcome. Her comms officer, a young man named Mark, looked at her with a mixture of exhaustion and hope. "Commander, we've hit another alien supply line. The aliens are scrambling. They're not as coordinated as they used to be." Olivia nodded. Her face hardened from the constant days of battle, but her eyes glinted with something else, a quiet sense of victory. "Good. Keep hitting them. We've slowed their reinforcements, and their control of the sky is faltering. Now we strike where it hurts. We need to make them realize that their strategy isn't working. Across the globe, other resistance cells were mimicking this success. In Moscow, a group of survivors using the remnants of old military vehicles and makeshift railgun turrets were setting up ambushes for alien patrols. In Africa, once devastated villages had now become fortified strongholds, from which small deadly strike teams launched coordinated attacks against alien outposts. Humanity had learned how to use its environment, how to turn a disadvantage into a weapon of opportunity. They had adapted. Meanwhile, in orbit, the battle had escalated. The human fleet, now larger and more organized than it had been at the onset of the invasion, engaged the alien ships in an all-out assault. The first salvo from humanity's railgun-equipped warships sent shockwaves through the alien fleet, tearing through the hulls of several vessels. The humans, though still technologically outclassed, had the advantage of familiarity. They knew their planet's gravity, the range of their weapons, and most importantly, they were fighting to defend their homes. The alien motherships, massive structures that had once seemed invincible, began to show signs of weakness. They were being overwhelmed. The railgun projectiles, which had once been tested in secrecy and seen as mere symbols of human ingenuity, were now the primary weapons in a full-scale war. Alien warships were being torn apart piece by piece as humanity's relentless barrage began to find its mark. The once pristine alien fleet now had to contend with the strength and will of a people who would not back down. Yet, despite their setbacks, the aliens were not finished. They knew they had underestimated Earth's tenacity, but they had a final card to play. A new breed of bioengineered soldiers, bred for combat, began to deploy on the ground. These creatures were faster, stronger, and more resilient than their predecessors. They were designed for one purpose: to end the human resistance once and for all. As the new alien shock troops poured into cities, the human soldiers were met with an unrelenting new wave of brutality. These bio-soldiers tore through the streets, their unnatural speed and strength making them nearly impossible to combat. For a brief moment, it seemed as though humanity had reached its breaking point. But in that moment of despair, something remarkable happened. The human soldiers, battered but not broken, rallied once again. The railguns, both on the ground and in the sky, fired faster than ever before. Humanity's tactics, honed over weeks of relentless combat, began to shine through. Alien shock troops that had once seemed unstoppable were now being torn apart by a combination of precision fire and sheer human will. The war was not over, but the momentum was shifting in humanity's favor. In the war-torn ruins of New York, Olivia stood beside a battered but unbroken soldier, watching as the last remnants of an alien warship plummeted to the ground. The sky, once darkened by the invaders' fleet, was now dotted with plumes of smoke and falling debris. Humanity was still standing, and they were beginning to believe, truly believe, that they could win. The tide had turned, and for the first time since the invasion began, the aliens realized that they were no longer the hunters. They were the hunted. The air was thick with the scent of burning metal and scorched earth as humanity's resistance, now fully united and organized, prepared for the final battle. The world had been irrevocably changed. What had once been bustling cities were now hushed ruins, scattered with the remnants of humanity's resilience. Despite the devastation, there was an undeniable strength in the air, a quiet but unyielding resolve. The aliens had underestimated Earth's capacity to endure, to fight back. Now, with the war at its climax, the question was no longer if humanity could win, but what they would have to sacrifice to do so. In the decimated streets of what was once Washington, D.C., Olivia Granger stood at the forefront of a growing army. She had fought in the trenches, led her soldiers through hell, and watched as the world she knew collapsed. But now, she could see something different in the eyes of those who followed her. Hope. The railguns, the soldiers, the unshakable will of humanity had proven to the invaders that Earth was not a planet to be taken lightly. Humanity was ready for the final confrontation. The ground beneath her feet vibrated as the first wave of alien reinforcements descended from the skies. The alien motherships, now heavily damaged and struggling to stay aloft, had begun to deploy their most formidable forces. These were not the bioengineered shock troops that had ravaged cities. They were the last of the Quothar, the ancient masterminds behind the invasion. These beings, tall and ethereal, carried a weight of millennia of knowledge and power, a deadly fusion of intellect and technology. Olivia's comms crackled to life. "Commander, the last of the human fleets are in position. We're ready for the final strike." Mark's voice, steady but filled with urgency, echoed through the line. Olivia turned to her officers. "Prepare the railguns. We'll give them everything we have left." The railguns that had once been scattered and mostly experimental were now humanity's deadliest weapon. The electromagnetic cannons had been reworked, strengthened, and integrated into humanity's warships, now hovering in orbit above Earth's atmosphere. Every last available weapon had been prepared for this moment. Humanity had no more time to waste. The Quothar had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to turn every loss into a battle won. And now they would see just how far Earth's resistance would go. As the alien forces descended, the final assault began. The Quothar fleet, surrounded by a swarm of smaller alien warships, opened fire. Energy beams screamed across the sky, lighting up the atmosphere with blinding flashes. Earth's cities were already scared, but the alien retaliation was far worse. The barrage was unrelenting, each blast designed to crush any hope left in humanity. Buildings were flattened, and entire sections of the world's remaining population were reduced to ash. But humanity was not backing down. The railguns on the ground powered up, their energy charging with a deep hum. Each shot fired sent a wave of shock through the battlefield, tearing apart alien war machines as they approached. On the ground, human soldiers, with their railgun suits enhanced for rapid mobility, struck at alien troops, cutting through their ranks with surgical precision. The clash of alien technology and human determination became an unstoppable force. In the sky, humanity's warships began to engage the alien motherships head-on. They fired salvo after salvo of railgun projectiles, each one a calculated strike aimed at disabling the enemy's core. Alien warships, previously seen as invincible, began to buckle under the barrage. Their shields flickered, and their hulls cracked as humanity's firepower rained down. Back on the ground, Olivia's team was deep in the heart of what had once been the Pentagon, now a shattered monument to humanity's survival. She gave a single command to her team. "We end this today. All railguns, all units, give everything you have." With synchronized precision, the final salvo was launched. The sky erupted as human firepower connected with the heart of the Quothar mothership, the ship that had been their central command. The impact was deafening. The explosion that followed was so powerful that it rocked the very atmosphere, sending shockwaves rippling through the battlefield. For a moment, everything was still. The alien ships, broken and in disarray, began to retreat, their once dominant forces now scattered and disorganized. The humans, battered but unbroken, gathered their strength for one final push. Olivia stood, watching the sky, where the last remnants of the alien fleet were retreating into the void of space. The battle was over. The war was won, but the cost had been high. The Earth had been ravaged, its cities reduced to ashes, and its people left to rebuild from the ground up. Yet, amid the ruin, humanity had proven that its will to survive was stronger than any force from beyond the stars. The final moment of victory had arrived, and the aliens had learned the one lesson they would never forget. Humanity, no matter how small, no matter how scattered, would never be conquered. The dust had settled, but the scars of war were everywhere. Earth, once a thriving hub of civilization, lay in ruins. The great cities were but shadows of their former selves, crumbling monuments to a past that could never be reclaimed. Yet amidst the devastation, there was a flicker of something powerful, hope. Humanity had risen from the ashes of destruction, had fought against the odds, and had emerged victorious. The invaders, the Quothar, had been repelled. But the cost had been staggering, and the road to recovery would be long and uncertain. In the aftermath of the final battle, survivors gathered in the ruins of what was once the United Nations headquarters. Now a symbol of humanity's resilience, the broken building stood as a reminder that Earth had been on the brink of annihilation, but it had not fallen. Olivia Granger, now regarded as a hero and a leader in the New World, stood before a crowd of survivors. Her once sturdy uniform was now torn and ragged, but her eyes were steady, filled with a quiet strength. She addressed those who had fought alongside her, who had bled for this moment. "We've lost so much," Olivia began, her voice strong but filled with grief. "But we are still here. We stand together, stronger than we were before. The aliens thought they could break us. They thought we would surrender, crumble beneath their might. But we didn't. We fought with everything we had. And now we rebuild, not just the cities, but ourselves." The crowd was silent, but there was an unspoken understanding among them. They had lived through hell, seen their families torn apart, watched as their cities burned, but they had also learned something invaluable. They were not alone. They were a community, bound not just by blood, but by a shared will to survive. And now, with the alien threat gone, they could begin to rebuild, not just their homes, but the very spirit of humanity itself. Olivia's speech was not just for the survivors. It was for the future, a future where humanity could no longer be divided by borders, by old rivalries. In the face of extinction, they had come together. It was a unity born of necessity, but it had become something more. Humanity had learned that its greatest strength was not its technology, not the railguns or the ships that had turned the tide of war. It was the human spirit, the will to stand against impossible odds and to rise from the ashes. As Olivia looked out at the crowd, she saw a mix of hope and determination in their eyes. It was not the look of a people who had just survived a war. It was the look of a people who had emerged from darkness and were ready to face the dawn. But there were still challenges ahead. The Earth was scared, its infrastructure shattered, its resources stretched thin. There was work to be done, and it would take years, even decades, to rebuild what had been lost. The cities would rise again, but they would rise differently. The world, once divided by politics and power struggles, would now be united by a single purpose: to heal, to grow, and to honor the sacrifices that had been made. As the survivors began to rebuild, humanity's greatest achievement was not the destruction of the alien invaders, but the realization that they could rebuild, no matter the cost. The railguns that had once been humanity's weapon of destruction would now serve as tools of progress, repurposed to power cities, to defend against any future threats, and to remind future generations of what had been lost and what had been gained. And as the first rays of the new sun broke over the horizon, shining down on the war-torn planet, humanity looked toward the future, not with fear, but with determination. They had survived the impossible. They had faced the darkness of extinction and emerged into a new dawn. And they would never forget what they had learned, that as long as they stood together, nothing could break them, not even the stars themselves.